Okay, well, let me throw that straight back to you, Philip. Is it fair to criticise Dickens for not having international appeal when he was writing in the 19th century?
I think I'm not sure that he doesn't have international appeal, and one of the things that brought this home to me very, very powerfully was about a month ago. For the first time, I went to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, and I think the moment that everyone will find a moment when they just have to turn aside and look out of the window because they can't bear to cope any longer. And for me, it was the moment when I came across the book that Otto Frank took in, and it was Sketches by Boz. The other point to which I thought, we don't know how international Dickens truly was a few months ago, when last year when the Olympic torch came to London and there were protests against it, and the Chinese ambassadress said she couldn't believe that she was witnessing such scenes in the country that had produced Jane Austen and Dickens. And I thought, you stupid woman, you don't know anything about Dickens. Dickens would have been out there protesting against tyranny. We heard from Jean about Dickens being an author who dealt with bonnets. Now that's kind of shorthand to suggest that Dickens was somebody who was implicated with decorum. He wasn't. He hated that kind of decorum. And I think of one of the great moments in all of Dickens when the Murdstones come to see Betsy Trotwood, who's sheltering her nephew. And what does she say to them? She says, "You, madam, if you ride your donkey over my lawn again, I'll knock your bonnet off." And Dickens was always one to knock the bonnet off. He invented the Ministry of Truth. He invented the Circumlocution Office. He knew what tyranny was like because he had seen it in the family, and he knew what it was going to be like if it expanded to the state. I think that we don't really know how international Dickens could be. I don't think he's ever going to stop. That's my view.
Jean, would you argue then that Orwell has greater impact, more lasting impact in terms of the social injustices and the global concerns that he identified?
I think two things. I think that in a sense it is obviously an absurd debate, and we've just seen there's lots of ways in which hard times, all of these things you can see going straight into Orwell. But I think that Orwell was a social reformer. This is a year of anniversary, the anniversary of liberty, the anniversary of setting up amnesty, Penn. And what's extraordinary, this man who had never had any money always gave it away. And he was a founding member of these extraordinary institutions that went all over the world that were about freedom and being able to speak. But I think that he does identify some things that I agree that Dickens was also perhaps identified, but he identifies compliance in your own mind as being something which you have to be particularly careful about. And I think that he does that so unsparingly. And I think that it's wrong to think of him as a novelist in that way. I think he's something like Leviathan. He's like Hobbes. He's a bit like Milton. He's somewhere in a territory which isn't comfortable. And I think his writing. So I think he is globally, because he identified features of power, which I don't think that Dickens, in a sense, does. And secondly, I think that he identifies them in our own minds. And I think that's the really dreadful and wonderful thing. And perhaps it's the 20th century. The Primo Levi, what would I have done? Where would I have, who would you have been where? Is absolutely, even though Dickens is the most wonderful social reformer, and I agree everything and blah, 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 blah. So I don't want to be against Dickens, but I think Orwell is the person that you think, what would Orwell have done? We don't know. Would I have done what Orwell? Would I have thought? Would I have managed to think out of the box with that independence? And I think that you can give Orwell Why I Write, which I have often done, to 18-year-olds, or one of those great essays, and they completely completely are entranced by this world that they understand sets them a standard. So.
And let's lower the tone a little bit now. And can you identify prejudices in, the Dickens people in Orwell and the Orwell people in Dickens that you particularly dislike and would like to point out?
The proponents. Well, I would say it's a fundamental difference in the idea of what a book ought to be, and I don't think as Orwell very truly said, no one is ever really going to go for Dickens because they agree with the message. I think if you truly love the novel, you will love a novel even though you disagree with what it is proposing on every single page. I think that Orwell. I think that it is just a fundamental division. Do you think of the novel as an argument towards a particular moral position, or do you just think of it as an arena of fantasy? And I can think of, for me, it's just an arena of fantasy, and I just want to quote. It's difficult not to quote Dickens at you, but I just want to quote at you one paragraph that Orwell could never in a million years have written because he wasn't modern enough. Dickens is more modern than this, and it's just fantasy. And it's the list of Miss Flight's birds. She has 20 canaries, and these are their names: hope, joy, youth, peace, rest, life, dust, ashes, waste, want, ruin, despair, madness, death, cunning, folly, words, wigs, rags, sheepskin, plunder, precedent, jargon, gammon, and spinach. Not in a million years could Orwell have invented a canary called sheepskin.
But the point is that Orwell was worrying about more important things than canaries and sheepskin. So the reality is this. Revolutionaries, socially active political thinkers, people that want to change the world, all have Dickens on their bookshelves. But in their back pockets, their rucksacks, and their camouflage jacket pockets, they've got Orwell. That's the difference. That's the difference. You will turn to Dickens for the finest entertainment. Oh, another coincidence, Mr. Dickens. How funny. They should just run into each other there. Massively entertaining, and he gives you more than a healthy dose of social reality. But people that change the world with Orwell in their hands and Orwell in their hearts. Yeah, baby.
Yes, but perhaps they haven't read him. Our Guilty Secret. Books we only say we've read.
Yeah, but how can you trust people that tell you, these are the books I said I've read? If they've not told you about the books they've read properly, how can you believe the research about the books they say they've read?
So just for those of us who haven't read that, Jenny, this is people saying that they've read...
Our Guilty Secrets, books we only say we've read, but like to claim that we've read them because it'll give us street cred. They're in our anoraks or whatever it is, rucksacks. And top of the list is 1984.
Does anybody here want to confess that they haven't read 1984?
We'll be gentle
brave.
with you.
Brave. Very brave.
You want to head to the room marked 101?